Good morning, dear souls. Today, I invite you to see confidence not as something outside of you, but as the currency of your inner world, a spiritual asset you can build, invest, and share with grace. Just as we use money to buy what we need in the outer world, confidence is the energetic currency that buys you freedom to speak your truth, to take action, and to live boldly. Confidence is not arrogance. It is knowing your worth without comparison. It is the soft yet powerful voice within that says, I am enough just as I am. Let us begin by recognizing that every thought you think shapes your experience. If you wake up saying, I can't do this, you withdraw from your confidence account. But if you affirm, I am learning, I am growing, and I am capable, you make a loving deposit. Affirmations are the daily deposits into your emotional bank. Say with me now, I trust myself, I am safe to be seen, I have all the confidence I need within me. Can you feel the shift? Confidence is a practice. Like watering a plant, you feed it every day with thoughts of compassion and courage. It's not about never being afraid. It's about choosing belief over fear again and again. And remember, confidence attracts. People are drawn to calm certainty, not perfection. When you carry yourself with belief, the world begins to mirror that back to you. But if you feel low in confidence today, that's okay. We've all been there. Perhaps you carry wounds, stories where you were made to feel less than. Louise Hay taught us that healing begins with forgiveness and releasing the past. Speak gently to that younger you. Say, I forgive myself for believing I was not good enough. I now choose to believe in myself. Dear ones, you were born with value. You do not have to prove anything. Confidence is your birthright, a seed already planted in the soil of your spirit. With the right thoughts, the right love, and the right practice, that seed grows. So, let us move forward today remembering, confidence is not something we wait for. It is something we create, nurture it, practice it, trust it. Because confidence is the currency that will take you everywhere your heart dreams to go. Confidence as inner wealth. Confidence isn't arrogance, it is your inner trust, your emotional savings account. It grows when you believe in your own worth. Let's take a moment to explore what it really means when we say that confidence is inner wealth. It's not just a metaphor. It's a truth grounded in both psychology and philosophy. When we think of wealth in the traditional sense, we often picture material accumulation, money in the bank, assets, possessions. But what if we redefined wealth as something less external and more internal? Confidence at its core is a kind of emotional capital. It is the currency of self-trust, a quiet yet powerful sense that you can rely on yourself to face the world with dignity, presence, and clarity. Confidence does not begin in the spotlight. It begins in the mirror. It begins in silence. It begins in the way you speak to yourself when no one else is listening. You are constantly making mental deposits either into the account of self-belief or into the deficit of self-doubt. Every thought, every interpretation, every self-directed word is either nourishing that inner wealth or slowly depleting it. Now, this idea is not just poetic. It's deeply rooted in the psychology of human development. Psychologists like Carl Rogers and Abraham Maslow spoke of self, worth, and self-actualization as the bedrock of well-being. Rogers emphasized the need for unconditional positive regard, and we often assume that must come from others. But true, lasting confidence blossoms when that regard comes from within. Louise Hay taught that we are each responsible for all of our experiences. That's not blame, that's empowerment. It means you have the ability to reshape the narrative you've been living in. If you've been taught that your value is conditional on success, on approval, on comparison, it's time to challenge that illusion. When you build confidence as inner wealth, you stop outsourcing your sense of worth. You no longer look to the outside world for constant validation. Instead, you begin to know, not just believe, but know that your presence is enough. You walk into a room and bring value with you, not because of what you say, or what you wear, or what you've achieved, but because you exist as a whole, capable, and evolving human being. This is not to say that confidence eliminates fear. Quite the opposite. Confidence acknowledges fear but moves forward anyway. It's the inner wealth that lets you take a risk, not because you're certain of the outcome, but because you are grounded in the knowing that you will be okay either way. The most liberating truth I can offer you is this: you do not need permission to value yourself. Confidence is not something granted, it is something reclaimed. You have been worthy all along, but like any currency, confidence needs circulation. You build it by using it. You invest it in your choices, your voice, your vision. So ask yourself, where have you been bankrupting your spirit by waiting for someone else to validate your worth? And what would it look like to start making deposits every day through kindness, patience, and truth? You are the vault, you are the currency, you are the wealth. Confidence is not found, it is remembered. Thoughts create confidence, as Louise Hay taught. Every thought we think is creating our future. Self-confidence is a thought pattern, not a gift. Change your thoughts, and confidence will follow. Let's continue by going deeper into the connection between our thoughts and confidence. Louise Hay famously said, "Every thought we think is creating our future." This is not just a comforting idea, it's a profound psychological reality. Thought is the architect of experience. What we consistently tell ourselves becomes the emotional landscape we live in. And confidence, more than anything, is built or broken in the mind long before it ever shows up in our actions. Most people believe confidence is something you either have or you don't, like a personality trait or a gift handed to a lucky few. But in truth, confidence is a cognitive pattern. It is a learned response, a cultivated way of interpreting the world and our place within it. The good news is that if it's learned, it can also be unlearned and relearned. Our brains are incredibly adaptive. Neuroscience shows us that thoughts literally shape the wiring of the brain through a process called neuroplasticity. If you have spent years repeating the idea, "I'm not good enough," or "I always mess things up," those neural pathways become strong like well-worn trails in a forest. But just as easily, you can begin creating new trails. "I am growing," "I trust myself," "I am capable." These thoughts may feel unfamiliar at first, even uncomfortable. But with repetition, they start to feel like home. Confidence is not about pretending. It's not about telling yourself things you don't believe just to feel better. It's about learning to speak to yourself with honesty and support, the same way you would encourage a child who is learning to walk. You wouldn't yell at them for stumbling. You wouldn't shame them into walking faster. You'd gently say, "That's it, keep going, you're doing beautifully." So why not speak to yourself the same way? Why not think thoughts that support your unfolding rather than thoughts that sabotage it? Many people think they need to feel confident before they take action. But in truth, the feeling often comes after the thought and the action. You start with a thought, "Maybe I can do this." then you take a small step. And when you survive that step, even if imperfectly, confidence begins to build. Thought, action, reinforcement, that's the cycle. Philosophically speaking, this brings us to the idea of self, concept, the story you tell yourself about who you are. Your confidence is directly tied to that story. If your internal narrative says, "I'm shy," "I'm not a leader," or "I always fail at this," then your behavior will unconsciously align with those expectations. But the story is just that, a story. And every story can be rewritten. Louise Hay often spoke about affirmations as tools for change. Not magic, not denial, but tools, intentional thoughts that redirect the mind. An affirmation isn't about pretending you're something you're not. It's about choosing a thought that aligns with the person you're becoming. When you say, "I trust myself," you are not lying to yourself. You are watering the seed of a truth that is already trying to grow. If confidence is built on thought, then every moment of thinking becomes an opportunity. You can choose to reinforce the old beliefs that limit you, or you can consciously redirect your mind toward ideas that uplift and strengthen you. This requires awareness, it requires patience, but it also requires courage, the courage to challenge a lifetime of mental habits and replace them with something better. So, take inventory. What thoughts are you spending your day with? Are they making you richer in confidence or poorer in spirit? Are they building you up or quietly breaking you down? The mind is a garden. Thoughts are the seeds. Choose wisely. Confidence begins the moment you realize that every thought is a choice, and today you can choose better. Affirmations build confidence. Daily confidence is not an overnight success. It is built moment by moment through kind, loving self-talk. If confidence is shaped by thought, as we've just explored, then we must ask, how do we train the mind to consistently think in ways that build us up, rather than tear us down? This is where the practice of affirmations becomes essential, not as surface-level mantras, but as intentional, conscious acts of psychological rewiring. Louise Hay taught us that affirmations are more than words. They are tools for transformation. They are bridges from where we are to where we want to be. They help reorient the inner dialogue that's been conditioned, often unconsciously, by years of criticism, fear, and comparison. And just like any tool, they require consistent use. Confidence is not a switch we flip once. It's a muscle, a habit, a rhythm. And affirmations are the daily exercise. They are the psychological equivalent of brushing your teeth, something you do not because it's dramatic or exciting, but because it protects your inner hygiene, your sense of self. You see, the mind is always listening. The subconscious does not distinguish between true and false the way the conscious mind does. It accepts repetition as reality. So if you say to yourself every day, "I am not good with people," or "I can't lead," or "I never get things right," your subconscious quietly absorbs those statements and begins to act on them as facts. Over time, they become your identity, not because they were ever true, but because they were rehearsed. But imagine instead waking up each morning and saying, even gently, even uncertainly, "I am safe to be myself," or each day, "I grow stronger and more confident in who I am." These words may feel foreign at first. That's natural. You're not repeating them because they already feel true. You're repeating them so they can become true. There is both a psychological and spiritual depth to this. Psychologically, affirmations work through a principle called cognitive restructuring. a concept used in modern therapeutic modalities like CBT, cognitive behavioral therapy. By challenging and replacing automatic negative thoughts, we actively reshape our beliefs and behaviors. Spiritually, affirmations are declarations of trust in your own becoming. They are acts of faith in your worth, long before the external world reflects it back to you. And this is where most people misunderstand affirmations. They think affirming something means pretending. But there's nothing false about speaking to the potential inside you. Louise Hay didn't ask us to lie to ourselves, she asked us to love ourselves into truth. When used consistently and sincerely, affirmations are not wishful thinking. They are self-directed instructions to the subconscious, reminding it that growth is possible, that healing is allowed, and that confidence is safe. I invite you to make affirmations part of your daily ritual, not because you're broken, but because you're rebuilding intentionally, consciously, and with care. Speak to yourself in the same tone you would use with someone you love, not because everything is perfect, but because you deserve to hear words that support your unfolding. Remember, affirmations are not about ego, they are about alignment. They don't inflate you, they restore you to the truth of who you are beneath the noise of doubt and fear. So start simply. Choose one sentence that reflects the self you are ready to meet. Say it aloud in the morning, in the mirror, in quiet moments throughout the day. And say it again tomorrow and again the next day, not to convince yourself, but to reconnect with yourself. Confidence is not built in a moment. It's built in many small moments, repeated with intention and care. Every affirmation you speak is an act of self-respect, and over time, self-respect becomes self-belief. Release the past and heal self-doubt. Heal the roots of insecurity by forgiving yourself and others. Letting go of old stories makes room for inner power to bloom. Let's take a moment to reflect on something that often lies hidden beneath the surface of confidence or the lack of it. That is the weight of the past. So many of us carry within us old stories, old wounds, and deep-seated self-doubt that are not truly ours to hold. These inherited or experienced beliefs act like invisible chains, quietly eroding our confidence from the inside out. Louise Hay understood that healing begins with forgiveness, not just of others, but of ourselves. The past, with its mistakes, regrets, and criticisms, often becomes the soil in which our insecurities take root. We replay memories where we felt not good enough, not seen, or not loved, and those recordings shape how we approach the present. But here is the profound truth. You are not your past. You are not the sum of your mistakes or the echoes of someone else's judgments. Philosophically, this touches on the idea of personal narrative and how much power we give to the stories we tell ourselves. Psychologists call this the self concept, the ongoing story we carry about who we are. When that story is filled with blame, shame, or fear, it becomes a barrier to confidence. The path to confidence runs directly through the gate of healing. Healing doesn't mean forgetting or pretending things didn't happen. Healing means seeing the past clearly and choosing to no longer let it define you. It means forgiving yourself for the ways you've been hard on yourself, perhaps for things you didn't even realize you were carrying. It means forgiving those who contributed to those wounds, not to excuse their actions, but to free yourself from carrying their weight. Louise Hay often said, "I release the past and now choose to live fully in the present." This isn't just spiritual poetry, it's a practical, psychological choice. When you forgive, you remove the emotional charge from old memories. This releases energy that was tied up in self, judgment, and fear and frees it to be used in building confidence instead. There is a healing power in simply acknowledging the pain rather than hiding from it or drowning it in distractions. When you bring conscious awareness to these old stories, you take away their unconscious power. You begin to see that those stories were conditioned by circumstance, not truth. You realize that the person you are today is not the person from that painful memory. Instead of a narrative of limitation, you can begin telling a story of growth, resilience, and courage. You can remind yourself daily that you are whole, worthy, and capable, not because you have achieved perfection, but because you have chosen to heal. Confidence is not built on denial or superficial positivity. It is built on authentic healing. It is built on the willingness to face what's uncomfortable and transform it with love. It's about meeting your fears with compassion rather than judgment. Psychologically, this process is akin to what therapists call emotional regulation and trauma resolution. The more you can sit with your discomfort and bring kindness to it, the more you reduce its ability to hijack your sense of self. This creates space for your natural confidence to emerge, unburdened by the ghosts of past criticism or failure. So today, I invite you to ask, what stories am I still carrying that no longer serve me? And more importantly, am I willing to forgive, to myself and to others, for those old wounds? Because forgiveness is not a sign of weakness, it is the greatest act of strength you can offer yourself. Remember, confidence isn't just about pushing forward with grit. It's about gentle release. It's about healing the roots so the tree can grow tall and strong. When you forgive and release the past, you reclaim your power. And with that power, your confidence blooms anew. Confidence is your birthright. You were born worthy. Confidence is not something to earn, it is something to awaken within. Now, let's bring everything together by reflecting on the vital role that taking consistent action plays in transforming confidence from a fragile idea into a living, breathing force in your life. Confidence is not a static state, it's a dynamic process. It is cultivated in the moments when you choose to move forward despite fear, uncertainty, or doubt. This is where intention meets embodiment, where thought becomes deed. Louise Hay's teachings remind us that healing and growth are not simply about thinking better thoughts or speaking affirmations. They are about living those truths through action. Affirmations and mindset shifts lay the groundwork, but it is through deliberate, consistent steps that confidence truly anchors itself in your being. Think about it this way. Knowledge without practice is like having a map, but never setting out on the journey. You can read about self, love, positive thinking, and inner worth, but if you don't apply those principles in your daily life, confidence remains theoretical, something you hope for rather than something you experience. Psychologically, this aligns with the concept of behavioral activation. Therapists often encourage people struggling with doubt or depression to engage in small, manageable activities that align with their goals and values. Why? Because action precedes feeling. You don't have to feel confident to act confidently. In fact, the act of stepping forward creates new neural pathways that reinforce self-efficacy and courage. This means that confidence grows not in perfect conditions, but in the messy, imperfect reality of life. It grows when you say yes to a new challenge, even though your heart races with fear. It grows when you speak your truth in a conversation, even if your voice shakes. It grows when you set boundaries, take responsibility, or make choices that honor your worth even when the path ahead is uncertain. Philosophically, this brings to mind the existential idea that we are defined by our choices. Your confidence is not fixed. It is an ongoing project, created moment by moment through the decisions you make. Every step you take toward authenticity, every risk you embrace, every failure you learn from is a vote for your own worthiness. Louise Hay's own life exemplified this. She didn't become a teacher of self-love by accident or by waiting for the perfect moment. She chose daily to rise from pain, to forgive, and to act on the belief that transformation was possible. Her confidence was a product of persistent, loving action, not just ideas. It's important to recognize that action doesn't mean perfection or grand gestures. Often the smallest steps create the greatest momentum. Choosing to look in the mirror and say, "I am enough." Setting a boundary with kindness, journaling your progress, or simply taking a breath before responding to fear, all these count. Over time, these small acts become the foundation of a resilient, self-sustaining confidence. So, I encourage you to ask yourself, what small action can I take today that aligns with the confidence I want to build? It might feel insignificant at first. That's natural, but every step forward rewrites your internal narrative. Every time you act with courage, you deposit more currency into your inner bank of confidence. Remember, confidence is not a destination, it's a journey. It requires patience, persistence, and compassion. It asks you to show up for yourself again and again, especially when it feels difficult. Confidence is created in the doing, not waiting for feeling, but choosing to act and trusting that with each step, your courage will grow.